Welcome back to our Enterprise Service Management Maturity Journey. If this is the first video you're watching, my name is Andy Hall, and I'm joined by Kurt Piazza from RL Canning and Charlie Betts from Forrester. As I mentioned earlier, there are 4 steps in our Enterprise Service Management Maturity process. This is the second step in the series, which is about being measured. Once your work is described, metrics can be applied to drive performance targets. In this next video, you'll see our manager Bob struggling with his boss, the CIO, where she informs him that rather than only thinking about his internal team, timing is important to the customer experience.
We've been getting escalations regarding the performance of your team. Seems like things are taking a long time to resolve. And even when you guys get the tickets resolved, there always seems to be rework before the customer is happy.
I am not aware of this. We seem to be organized with our work and able to keep up with the flow of issues and requests from our customers.
Well, you may be now, but keeping up isn't going to win you any awards, Bob. You need to put yourself in your customer's shoes and see what that experience is like. What metrics do you track for your team?
We track MTTR, of course.
That's great, Bob. Do you have targets for these tasks?
No, nothing formal. Things change so much that we didn't think that would be of any benefit.
That is certainly not the case. Your operational performance must have targets along with prioritization. The culmination of the team's execution is what the customer feels. I need you to implement some service level agreements for all the work products and services you provide to our internal and external customers. I suggest your benchmark is less than 24 hours for resolution with maybe a few exceptions.
I am not staffed for that, and I already know our MTTR.
Well, I think you need to do some more analysis on the current MTTR and quality metrics you have, and then base your needs on what it would take to hit those targets. When you know that, come back to me and we will talk. By next Tuesday, I want you to commit to a date when you will have this information.
Understood. I thought we were in a good place.
So seems like just when you think everything is going so well, it obviously isn't. What's really going on here, guys?
Well, I think the old saying, what gets measured gets managed, will always be
Right.
true. Metrics and your response to those metrics is what drives that continuous improvement and keeps you ahead of your competitors. And if you don't think that you have competitors because you're in IT, you're wrong. I mean, employees today have options, and employees are important. If they aren't happy with the way their company services them, they don't feel like they're being as productive as they can be, well, they have the option to leave, go somewhere else that does this better. And we know it's hard to keep good people. So this needs to be done properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you start with the lack of customer perspective.
Thanks, Charlie. It sounds like there are some serious challenges that need to be overcome here. And so I'm just wondering, what are some of the solutions, and are they difficult to implement into an existing service model?
I think that Net Promoter Score, for example, I mean, that requires some technical capability. You need to be able to ask people after a service experience, very quickly after a service experience, how did that go? How did that work? On a scale of 1 to 10, would you recommend the experience you just had to a colleague or friend? We get this all the time when I call my airline, I'm always asked this kind of a question. But we need to start making this more standard practice internally. And yet there's some technical, lifting that needs to happen here. You need to have the right systems in place to enable that kind of thing. You also need to be looking analytically at the overall flow of work into the system. To detect queuing hotspots, that's not necessarily, off-the-shelf reporting. You might need to think a little bit about how you're going to do that. To identify demand spikes, again, it takes it takes some reporting skills to look at some of these leading indicators that I think are super critical.
Kurt, anything to add to that?
You mentioned leading indicators. I think that it's really important to understand what is a leading indicator and what is a lagging indicator in these situations. You definitely need, You need both, because if you have the correct leading indicators, you can many times, adjust for what seems to be coming. So when Charlie's talking about those queuing hotspots, when that backlog starts building or the aging starts going up a little bit, that your turnaround times are going to be going down. Your MTTR is going to be going, is going to start having problems. So it's important to see that stuff early on so you can forecast it and address it in some way actively, instead of saying, "Oh, look what happened,"
Yep.
and we'll try to do better next time.
All right, well, thanks, guys. So when we have solutions like you just described, are you able to actually affect a positive organizational change? And can you guys talk about some of those benefits?
Sure. Changes to the organization in this area, I think, can really move that needle. When you have the right metrics, like we were just talking about, and how to interpret them, then you can manage operational performance, capacity management, user adoption, all these things, because they're at the center of how teams operate predictably. So as time goes on, the more historical data you have, the more predictable you can become, and this is going to reduce cost and risk in any organization.
Yeah, totally agree. I know that organizations that are becoming more disciplined in this regard are, in fact, they can do things, for example, like say, hey, we see a spike in demand here, and let's see if we can redirect some of our existing capacity to meeting that.
Thank you for your time. We hope you'll join us for our next conversation, where we will be discussing the next step in our maturity evolution: how to better optimize your enterprise service model.